Hi friends, 1 Timothy 6:6 says, "Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth." Is that not beautiful? Godliness with contentment is great wealth. What an amazing thing. If you live a godly, content life, you will live a rich life. That is awesome. It is a peaceful life that we are called to live. And I want that for you, and I want that for me. This 1 Timothy goes on to say, "After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content." Now, that's a super simple concept, but I feel like it's kind of hard. It is hard, not kind of, it is. Would you be satisfied if only your basic needs were met? Would I? Honestly, I'm not sure. I live a pretty good life, and I want to say yes, but sometimes I fall into discontentment. I do, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all because it is an anxious place to live where my mind runs wild, and I don't want to be there, and I don't want that for you either. And so if our basic needs are met, which God promises to do, then let us be content with those things. So today we're going to talk about contentment, all about it. We're going to talk about what it is, what it isn't, because I feel like there's several misconceptions about what contentment is, and so we just want to just debunk those things. And then we're going to talk about, are you living discontently? We're going to do some self-assessment, look into ourselves, and make some decisions about if we are living a content life or not. And then we're going to talk about what to do about it if we're not. And even if you are, it'll be helpful to be a tool that if one day, when you do, not if, when you fall into some sort of discontentment, you will be able to pull it out and use it. So, before we get into the meat of this, I want to tell you about a resource that I just created recently. It's going to be in the description of this video. It is a step-by-step guide that will help you take your priorities, the things you know are the most important in your life, and set up weekly rhythms with those things. It will help you decide in your own life, it is personalized to you, what needs to stay, what needs to go, and if there's things you need to delegate out. It is very simple. It'll walk you through the whole process. Grab that. It's totally free, and I want you to have it. Okay. All right, so let's jump right on in. What is contentment? The basic definition of contentment is accepting what is and where you are in life rather than wishing things were different. And that is a very basic definition, but that is what it is. But I think that from this basic definition, a lot of misconceptions, like we talked about earlier, can be thought of and read into the situation. What contentment's not. And we want to make sure we know the things that it isn't, so we can live a content life fully, right? So I'm going to talk about 4 things pretty quickly, what it isn't. The first one is contentment is not being lazy. Those things do not go hand in hand. God has not called us to be a lazy people. And being content does not mean you're not goal-oriented. It doesn't mean that you're not making plans for the future. It doesn't mean that you don't have wishes and hopes. It just means that your identity is not tied to those things. Your identity is tied to Christ, and you know where you stand. If you get those things or you don't get those things, if the goals make it or they don't, if your tasks fail or succeed, your identity is not tied in to the things that you're striving to do. Your contentment comes from the Lord. So it's not being lazy. You're not lazy. Lazy does not mean content. Lazy people very often are not content because they so badly want something else, but they're not willing to do anything about it. That's not contentment. Speaking of not doing anything about it, the second thing is complacency. Being content is not being complacent. They're not synonymous. Being complacent is allowing things, bad things, to happen to you or those around you that you yourself are able to change. That's not being content. That is being complacent. And this is not okay. Complacency is not good. You don't want to live a complacent life. You want to live a content life which is accepting things you can't change in your life and expecting the Lord to take care of your basic needs. That's the difference. The third thing is you're not a doormat. You don't, like we talked about in complacency, you're not just being walked over, like you just accept things. You can remove yourself or someone else, well, you can't, unless they're little, you can't remove someone else from a situation that's bad for you. You can be content with the fact that you can't change them, but you can set up healthy boundaries around your person. If that's physical or emotional, or if that's like on the digital space, you do not have to live in a space with someone who's bad for you. You don't have to have people in your life that bring you down. You are allowed to move yourself out of that situation. Being content does not mean putting up with other people's crap. No. We are called to love, and there are a lot of situations where we do need to love, but boundaries are so important. And being a doormat is not being content. Don't let someone bully you into thinking that you have to stay in a situation because you're called to be content and you're called to love. So don't be a doormat. That's not what contentment is. That's not what God has called us to do. So the last one that we're going to talk about is happiness. Being content is not being happy. You are totally allowed to have bad, sad, bad, upset emotions and still be content. It is allowed. They're not synonymous. And so I want to tell you this story. So after the hurricane that displaced us, I was still driving to the church that we had gone to previously before the hurricane. So I was driving like an hour and a half to go there. And my husband had to work a lot, so I was going by myself, and this was before we had kids. So I was just, I feel like I would cry like every time I drove over there. Oh, like a lot. And I'm not a crier, so like this was not a normal thing for me. And I was talking to my friend and his wife, also my friend, she's my friend too. And I was just so upset because I knew that God was going to take care of us. I knew that we were going to be fine. I knew that everything was going to be all right. I didn't know how. I had no idea what was going to happen next. But I did know that the God of the universe, the one that I trusted, was going to make a way in the best way possible. But I could not stop being sad about it, like about the whole situation. And he told me, he asked me one question, and it was so helpful, this conversation. So I want to give it to you, so hopefully it can be helpful to you too. He asked me, what happened when Jesus found out that his friend Lazarus died? And we know, right? He wept. Jesus wept. And so my friend, he told me, he said, if Jesus, who of course knew what was going to happen next, he raised him from the dead. He knew things were going to be okay. If he could be sad about a situation, you can too. Jesus wasn't discontent. And I wasn't being discontent either. I was allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be sad. You can trust the Lord and know that he is going to provide and move you forward in the best possible situation and still mourn something, still be sad about something. And it is a practice that we continuously go through as we go through more and more experiences in our life. You are allowed to be sad or upset, my friend. Okay. So those are the 4 things that often come up about contentment. It is not being lazy, it's not being complacent, it's not being a doormat, and it is not happiness. Okay? So this is a heart issue. It really is, and it looks different for everybody. Being discontent looks different. And so this heart issue, it can come out in a lot of ways. It can manifest itself in buying things that you don't need because you feel like that'll make you better. It can come out in fantasizing about what life would look like if you lived in a different area, if you just had a better job, if your husband made more money, if you had a different husband, if you had more kids or less kids, or any of those things that you yourself could be thinking about and wondering what it would be like and fantasizing about it. and letting yourself live in that place. Wishing time away, thinking if only you could get this new thing, if only you could move, if only you could have another baby, if only you wouldn't have had that other baby. That sounds horrible. I'm sure people don't think that. If only you were something else, if you would do something else, move somewhere else, do something. If only. It's a freaking killer, right? Assuming that other people have it better. We don't know how people's lives are, but it's easy to assume when we see them that they're doing better than we are, because we don't know all the ins and outs, right? And then never feeling satisfied. If you're always looking for the next thing, you never feel satisfied. Never, ever, ever, my friend. Like I said, it is a hard issue, and as it goes on, it manifests itself in a lot of ways. You have to be willing to do this self-reflection and to look inward and to be honest. Honesty is such a key. God is always working in us, and if we're not willing to change or to get rid of things that are evil in our heart, then we're not being sanctified the way that He has called us to. And so we have to be willing to say, yes, Lord, show me what's in me that I need to remove. So let's go through some questions, and I want you to look at yourself and decide, is this me? Am I doing this? Do you find yourself comparing yourself and your family and your business to other people? Good or bad, right? Do you find yourself thinking, oh, they're so much better. If only I could do more like they did. If only I homeschooled like they did. If only we had more money, or we had that car, or my business made as much money as hers did. Finding that comparison is like you're living in discontent. Or are you, the other opposite, is you're comparing yourself to people who aren't doing as well as you, and that makes you feel good. That is also like discontent, because we have to be satisfied where we are, not based on who is doing stuff around us, but on what we're doing ourselves. So are you satisfied with your family, your life, and all of those things, despite what's happening around you? Are you always wishing that things were different so often, to the point where you are hindering other activities in your life? If you're hanging out in your backyard, you're playing with your kids, and all you could think about is, I wish I had enough money to take my kids to Universal or SeaWorld or, I don't know, the Redwood Forest, wherever you would want to take your kids. And it's so much so that you're not able to enjoy yourself right there with your children that want your attention. That is discontentment, my friend. Having desires and wants is not bad, but letting them take over is. Do you find yourself thinking that things would be better, or they would be different, if only something else? If only. That is such a killer. If only this could happen. And do you find yourself dissatisfied with life in general? Do you find yourself, it's not hard if you really are dissatisfied to realize that you are, unless you have pushed down a lot of emotions, which is possible. But if you're dissatisfied, it's easy to tell, because you're just kind of on edge. You're never really content, never really at ease with yourself. So my friend, are you those things? Do you find yourself comparing yourself to others in the good way or the bad way? Not a good way, but like you're better than them or you're worse than them. That is what I mean. Do you find yourself wishing things were different to the point that you're hindering things that you're doing, your activities you're doing? Do you think that things would just be better if only something else would happen? And are you just genuinely dissatisfied with what's happening around you? So if your answer is yes to any of those, it's okay. It's okay that you're there. It's not okay to stay there, my friend. Let's move forward. We can do this. And we can all be in that pit, that discontentment pit. That was weird sounding, but we don't want to stay there, right? So the foundation of living a content life is knowing who is in control. Our Savior, Jesus Christ, is in control. We have him, and we know that his intentions are the best for us. What a glorious, beautiful, freeing thing that God is in control and he has our best interests at heart, right? Now that is the foundation, but if you're like me, I really like practical steps. Like, okay, but like, what do I do about it? Okay, I know it, because it's easy to know, not easy to know, but it's saying something and doing something about it are different. And so I'm going to give you one very simple but very powerful way to just get out of discontentment. And you may have to do it a lot. So I'm not telling you that it's going to be easy, but it's not hard. It's not complicated. You can do it. You can do it. So before I start, I'm going to read to you from Habakkuk. And I know that's not a place that a lot of people read from. And honestly, it's not a place that I read from a lot either. But I really like this verse, and it is just perfect. Okay? So it is Habakkuk 3, finding it, sorry, 17 through 19. And it says, even though the fig trees have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crop fails, and the fields lie empty and bare, even though the flocks die in the fields, and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The Lord, the sovereign Lord, is my strength. He makes me a surefoot as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. Now, did you hear all that? Things were not good in this part, right? They don't have food. Like the birds are dead, the cattle barns are empty, the fields are dead, the trees aren't producing. Like, things are not okay. They're just not. But he says in verse 18, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, and I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. Gratitude, my friend. Gratitude is what will yank you out of being discontent. I find myself, I do struggle with being content. I do find myself struggling to do this. And so anytime I realize it, and I am allowing myself to fantasize or think about things that could be different, or where else we could do or live, or any of those things, I just start being thankful. Anywhere I am, I start being thankful. I thank him for the trees around me, or the coffee that I'm holding in my hand, my son that's in front of me, the fact that I have legs that can walk around, that I can wear glasses. Like, literally anything near me, I start thanking the Lord for, because it is real hard to be upset, discontent, when you're being grateful to God for what he has given you. And that is the way back to contentment. And the thing is, you may have to do it a bunch, because discontentment creeps in all the time. And it is so easy to fall into the trap. But we don't have to live there, friend. You don't have to go down that hole. You don't have to live in that hole. You can come out by being thankful for what God has given us, for where you are, for who he's given you, for being a daughter of the King. Like, that's a huge one, right? But I really find it helpful to just stop and look at the things that are physically around me and thank the Lord for those things. And so that is my encouragement to you. That is my what I tell you to do, right? Like, just go out and do that. Be thankful, because the more you do it, the easier it'll happen for you, and the quicker you will get out of that cycle of being discontent. And like I said, simple, not complicated, but powerful, and can really be hard to do. But I know you can do it, because you yourself have the Holy Spirit living in you. And we have the ability to have self-control, to have peace, joy, and all of the other fruits of the Spirit. And this, my friend, you can live in contentment. You can do it, and I can do it. So let's do it.